Hello, my fellow comic book collectors. It's Alan, the Comic Collector Geek, and these are the hottest Golden Age comics of the week. Like every week, I try to do something a little bit unusual for each week. I try to make it a little bit more fun by not just showing the same books every week after week. Sure, there's some big sales that happen, but these ones are actually really interesting. So what I did was I took sort of the top eBay sales of the week, like the biggest sales. And I kind of looked at those specifically, and I wanted to see, were they new records? Were they, flatlined? Or were they steals? And this is actually a bit of a mixed bag. It's going to be an interesting video because it is a mixed bag. It is interesting that, these are Golden Age books. I mean, these you don't see this very often, and they're big books, and we're going to have some pretty interesting sales here. So we're going to start out with Horrific number 7. This is a comic media book from 1953. It is a decapitation cover where almost a decapitation cover. So it's a guillotine cover. You got the guillotine is coming down on the guy's head or neck, and his head, he's like, you can see the sweat pouring down from his face. He's going to get decapitated. It's a Don Heck cover, just a classic cover. So pretty much most of the books from the Horrific line are pretty much all classic covers. So a very highly sought after pre-code horror line of comics. So this was a CGC 2.0 that sold, and it sold for a best offer of $449. Now, that is a great price. This is actually a record for this book, but there was no prior sales in this grade. But if we look at how much a 1.5 sold, so grade point lower, there was a sale back in April of 2023 for $555. So this sold for less than a half grade point lower. There was actually a 2.5 that sold for $780 back in July of 2022. So this is really down from either of those two sales. Somebody just got a great deal. This was a really great deal because it was a best offer. So, I think there's a motivated seller that just wanted to get rid of the book. And somebody picked it up. So make those offers, people. You never know. You can maybe get a great book. So there are 36 of these on the census, and 36 of them are Universal Blue Labels. Number 9 on the list is Vault of Horror number 35. This is a book I really love. This is a Johnny Craig cover from 1954 from EC Comics. It's the classic, Christmas tree with the coffin under it, and the wife is looking at this coffin and going like shocked expression, and there's like a card on the coffin that says, "To my wife." Merry Christmas. So it's just a very interesting cover, and you get the husband in the background with the axe gonna chop her. So very great classic horror. Another PCH book, pre-code horror book that is just a classic one. So this one was a CGC 1.0 that sold for $780. Now that's actually a big sale. That's actually a pretty big sale for this book. It's a new record because it's the only sale for this grade. However, if we compare that to a 1.8, which is like 2 grade points higher, there was a sale back in February of this year for $613. So this is way above the much higher graded copy that had sold. So just a really great one. And there's actually a little bit of note with this one because this was a Swagelhaus. So if you're familiar with Swagelhaus, this was his copy that he sold. Yeah, he got a great deal. So there are 220 of these on the census, and 202 of them are Universal Blue Labels. One thing that's worthy, I always try to mention this with EC Comics, there are a lot on the census generally, much higher than typical books for the Golden Age. And that's partly due to the fact that EC Comics were very popular in the Golden Age, and there was just a lot of them printed. So, but still, only 200 remain. That's like, that'd be really scarce for Silver Age, but for Golden Age, that's a bit of a higher census. Number 8 on the list is Strange Worlds #1. Now, this is from Avon from 1950. It's a Gene Fawcett cover, and it's a great one. You got typical situation: you land on a planet with weird alien life, and what do? You come out of your spaceship with a bikini and you start firing. And that's what the cover is. It's kind of a cute cover, bit of good girl sci-fi cover, and it's just it's a funny cover. It's a cool cover. This was a CGC 8.5 that sold, and it sold for $1,299. Now, again, this is a steal because this book had sold back in 2019 for $1,800. And then it sold in November of 2020 for $1,560. And then this year, it actually even went down. It was kind of on this downward trajectory. It sold for $1,042 in February, or actually March of this year. So $1,042. So it was just going down for some reason. I'm not sure why. Now, this was set up as an auction. This was an auction bid, and it only got one bid. This was the starting bid, and it was for $1,299. So a great price for this book. I'm not sure why it's on this sort of downward trend. There is a reasonably high census. It's like there's 89 of them on the census, 83 of them Universal Blue Labels. But it's actually a cool book. I think whoever got it for $12.99 got it for a great price. The next one is another big book. This is number 7 on the list is Brenda Star #14. And this is from 4-Star Comics. And this is a 1948 book with a Jack Kamen cover. And it's just a classic cover. It's like a good girl classic cover because it's she's this girl. She's tied to tied to a radiator, and she's using handcuffs to tap on the radiator SOS. So just a really cool cover. Her clothes are all ripped. She looks a little messed up. Just a really classic cover. Yeah, this was a 1.5 that sold, and it sold for $1,401.25. Very odd number, but that's what it sold for. This is actually another steal. Somebody else got a steal on another steal because this is a major book. Definitely one that is highly sought after, and went for auction, and somebody got it for a really great price. The record for this book was set back in August of 2021 in this grade for $1,799.99. So $400 savings from just 2 years prior. So I don't know what's going on, but this was another steal. So there's 75 of these on the census, and 66 of them are Universal Blue Labels. Number 6 on the list is Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen. This is 1954, a DC comic, and it's the boy of 1,000 faces. So this is the first time we get Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen, in his own title. And kind of a cool book for that reason. It's his first self-titled book, and it's also one with a very odd cover because, you get him putting on a very cheesy disguise. So he's going out to solve the case that, without Superman's help. So just a really interesting book because it is a first issue of a fairly long-running series. So this was a 4.0 that sold. Oh, actually, I should mention before I say what the sale price was. It's a Kirk Swan and Ray Burnley cover. It was a 4.0 that sold, and it sold for $1,499.99. It was a buy it now price. So this was a new record. The previous sale for this book was $100 lower, set in July of this year, so for $1,400. And this is what you get when you buy it now. You're always going to pay a little bit more than the previous sale, for the most part. There are 169 of these on the census, and 146 of them are universal blue labels. I think it's still a good price for that, actually. $100 in, it's pretty flat in terms of the price, not a huge increase. So the next one is number 5 on the list is Zip Comics number 18. This is a MLJ comic from 1941. MLJ later becomes Archie Comics. This is a Irv Novick or Novik. Some people say Novik, some people say Novik. I actually checked. How is his name pronounced? Is it Novik, or Novik? And according to the pronunciation things, it's Novik, but I don't know. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. Okay, so this is actually the first appearance of Wilbur in comics. Now, Wilbur is like an Archie character. Wasn't as major as Archie or Jughead or any of those characters, but Wilbur actually had his own run, and characters like Katie Keene appeared in the Wilbur comics. So it is a fairly major character for Archie comics. But this is a pretty cool cover. It doesn't have Wilbur on the cover, but it is a cool cover because you got Steel Sterling on the cover, and he's like strangling this lizard man guy. And you got this good girl sort of strewn across the cover as well. And then you got this guy's head in the bottle. And I was actually checking because right next to the head it says Novak, Novik or Novak, Novik. I don't know. Still haven't figured out which way to pronounce it. But it almost looks like the artist himself, like inside this jar with a head in it. I was looking up, is it his face? But kind of looks like him. I'm not sure if it is that, but if it is, it's a pretty funny thing to do. So this was a 2.5 conserved grade that sold, and it sold for $1,800. Now that is actually a pretty strong sale, because it's the highest for this conserved grade. But what I always do is I look at how does that compare to what a blue label book for this grade would sell for. And there was a blue label that had a record sale back in June of 2023 for $3,360. But there was actually a more recent sale in September of this year for a blue label that sold for $1,800. So I'm not sure about that one. It's so based on that, if you could get a blue label for the same price like a couple months ago for this conserved one at you definitely would want the blue label. So yeah, it seems like a really great price. Usually what I do is whenever it's conserved grade, you can usually say it's about half of the previous blue label sale. So typically, if we go by the high sale of $3,300, you would expect this book to sell for around $1,700, roughly. So to sell for $1,800 was a new, it was a pretty good, strong sale. So great book, great book. It sold for a really great price. So there are 19 of these on the census, and 17 of them are universal blue labels. Next one on the list is Little Dot number 3. This is from Harvey Comics 1954, This is actually the first appearance of Mr. Richard Rich, and he is Richie Rich's father. So it's the first father appearance. Um, it has kind of a weird cover with Little Dot vacuuming up leaves, but that aside, it is a cool first appearance because Richard Rich, or Richie Rich's father, is a pretty major character for Richie Rich. This was a 9.4 that sold, and it sold for $1,909. And a 9.4 is actually the highest grade for this book. So, but the funny thing about it is maybe they're all file copies because there's 7 on the census that are 9.4s. So that's half the census is just the highest grade. So it kind of takes away the bit of the coolness of having that highest grade, because if there's 7, if there's 6 other copies, it kind of isn't as cool. It's always best to have the highest and only highest copy, but still, this is a big book, and this was another steal. So the biggest sale for this book was set back in 2016. So this book, since 2016, has actually kind of gone down. The record back then was $2,629. So set back in June of 2016. So roughly $700 more expensive and 7 years ago. Now, the last sale for this book was back in 2019, and it sold for $1,481. So it's up from that last sale. It could have been that the 2016 sale was just an anomaly, that it kind of shot up and, it corrected after. I'm not sure why it had such a big sale and then dropped over $1,200 in a 3-year period. But now it's kind of coming back up a bit from that 2019 sale. There are only 14 of these on the census, and all of them are Universal Blue Labels. So this interesting book, I actually have it in my collection. I have a raw copy, a 3.0. I paid $100 for it. It's one of those ones where in lower grade, it's not as valuable. And so that's why the census count's pretty low, and most of the grades are pretty high. But I would consider this a bit of a steal just because of that 2016 sale. That it was much higher back then than it is now. And if you can get a book for cheaper, like 7 years later, that's a pretty good deal. Okay, so number 3 on the list, Captain Marvel Adventures number 21. This is from Fawcett, 1943. It is a C.C. Beck cover. It has Hitler, Goring, and Goebbels on the cover. So the 3 kind of main evil guys from the Nazis on the cover, and they're getting zapped by Captain Marvel. It looks like he has almost like a photograph thing that's shooting out an X-ray beam at them. Just a cool cover. It's one of the most valuable covers and comics from the Captain Marvel Adventures run. And it's a pretty huge book. This was a 7.5 that sold, and it sold for $3,000. Now this is a massive record for this book because the last sale was back in 2018 for $1,175. So it's up like 3 times what it sold for back 5 years ago. Just a really strong sale for this book. And I've seen this book come up on Heritage a few times, and it's always had very strong sales. People really like these Nazi covers. So there's 78 of these on the census, and 66 of them are Universal Blue Labels. Now, the interesting thing about this book is usually Captain Marvel Adventures are pretty common for the Golden Age, similar to the EC, because they were massively printed. This is actually a pretty low census count for a Captain Marvel Adventures book, and it's one that is, if you have it, you're going to get it graded because of the fact that it is a fairly major key. And there's just a pretty low census count. So 78 on the census is pretty low for this kind of book. When you have like back in the day when they were printing these, they were printing about 1 million copies per issue. So so they're pretty massively printed. Number 2 on the list is Detective Comics number 30. This is from it's from DC Comics from 1939. And it's a Fred Gardner cover. It's not a Batman cover, but it is a cool book because it's like maybe the 4th appearance of Batman. It's kind of hard to say. But I don't think he appeared in anything else before this, so other than other detective comics. So I think it's the 4th appearance of Batman. But it's a blowtorch cover. Like there's like a guy who looks like he's like working in a construction thing and he's blowtorching this other guy. So kind of an interesting cover. But it also has a Dr. Death appearance in it. But I think the reason people go after this book is for that early Batman appearance. This was a 5.5 that sold, and it sold for $16,500. So that was a pretty big sale. This book had sold in the same grade back in August of 2010, so many years ago, for $4,481. So this one has gone up considerably in the last 13 years. It's like quadrupled in price basically. But there have been sales that happened in other grades that are nearby that you can kind of judge whether or not this was kind of within the market for this book. There was a 5.0 that sold recently for $10,388. So this is kind of what you would kind of expect for this book, in line with the market for this book, for the current market. So very strong sale for this book though, 16,000. Wow. Pretty pricey book for considering there's no Batman on the cover. But yeah, very cool book. The next issue is the one that everyone loves. 31 is the classic cover. Okay, there are 67 of these on the census, and 41 of them are Universal Blue Labels. Number 1 on the list is Wonder Woman number 1. And I was surprised to see this sale because this was this is a book I love, and this is a book from DC Comics, 1942. It is the first appearance of Ares, but most importantly, it is the first Wonder Woman comic where it's self-titled book for her, and also retells her origin. So it's an H.G. Peters cover, and it's just a really cool book. I mean, it's like that classic, horse jumping into the German nowhere land, trenches, and it's just a cool cover. This was a 1.5 that sold, and it sold for $19,000. So really big sale. Now this is the highest sale for this grade, but it's also the only sale on record for this grade. So take that whatever way you want, but this was a huge sale because 1.0 sold for $15,600. Wow, I'm messing up the numbers today. So it was $15,600 for 1.0. So this is like 4,000 more than just a half grade point lower. It's a pretty strong sale. There was actually a 2.0 that sold for 18,000. So this is a really, really strong sale for this book. Now, there are 198 of these on the census, and 128 of them are universal blue labels. When I bought my copy, and I always think about this because, like, you get like a 1.5, and it is a universal blue label, which is cool. But I bought a restored copy. And now my copy, the restoration was, I forget what, I think it's trimmed. It's the worst because it's not something you can go back to. You know, you can't untrim a book. So it's trimmed on all three sides. And I think there's a couple other things that were done to it. And because of that, you know, it was a 7.5, and I was able to get it for, I paid like, was it 18 or 16 or 18, somewhere around there. I'm forgetting for some reason. So the point is, my 7.5 was cheaper than this 1.5. And that to me is kind of shocking, you know, that restored books take such a dive in the price compared to these universal blue labels. So I always wonder, what do people think? Which would you rather? Would you rather, for the same price, would you rather a high grade restored book, like a 7.5, or would you prefer the 1.5 that kind of looks like a 1.5? You know, which would you prefer for the same price? So just a question to the audience. I'd be curious what you think of that. Now, this was, as I said, this week was a very mixed bag in terms of high sales and low sales. We had 4 books that I identified as being steals, and 1 book that I thought was just flat. So kind of a mixed bag. Like, is there something, a shift in the golden age market? I don't know yet, and I'm curious. You know, if by doing this week after week, if we start to see that kind of repetitive, like, oh, there's a lot of steals this week, a lot of steals this week, it might be that the market might be even down on the golden age, which would be kind of shocking because the golden age had been, for the longest time, one of the few markets within comics where there had been strength. So I'd be curious what people are finding. I'm getting a lot of deals out there, actually, and I'm just curious what other people are experiencing within the comic collector community. Are there deals to be found in the golden age? Are you experiencing sales dips? I'd be curious. So tell me in the comments below. Thanks again for watching. Bye for now.